everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And we have again the amazing Dr. John Lundwall with us. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, we are so excited about this next episode. And I know everybody is also equally excited. We want to point out that this is going to be a third part. We've already had a part one and a part two where we discussed oral versus secondary oral versus literary traditions in the pre-Columbian Americas. So if you want to start from the very beginning on our journey with Dr. John, or as I like to call him, Indiana John, if you want to start from the very beginning, you can go back and watch part one and part two, but you can also just dive in right here because in the first couple episodes, John mentioned he had some other points that he wanted to cover, and there's been great interest in that. We had a lot of people come up to all of us at Sunstone and say, when are you going to hit those other points? So we do not disappoint. We want to make sure that we dive into this. So today we've asked John back to just start talking about, I believe this will be his third point in talking about the Book of Mormon authenticity and pre-Columbian America. So that being said, let's just dive right in with John. Go right ahead.
All right. Well, I will share my screen. All right. When I started reading the Book of Mormon with orality and literacy in mind, I came up with 5 theses. Tonight, we're going to do number 3. The 5 theses are: 1, the greatest anachronism in the Book of Mormon is the text itself. 2, a tight translation is impossible. A loose translation is an act of violence. We've already gone over those. Today, we'll go over 3. The text of the Book of Mormon cannot be derived from the description of the gold plates. And then we have the Book of Mormon characters are fabricated. The standard of proof as set by the priesthood brethren resides only in a tight translation and in its literal historicity. So tonight we're doing point 3, having determined that the Book of Mormon text is entirely anachronistic. Its historicity is written as objective narrative of sequential historical facts, where the cosmovision rests in historical truth instead of cosmic truth, where its theology is displaced from sacred place to the individual, from sacred ritual and sacrifice to personal repentance, rooted in solitary divine atonement, where sermons replace dances, laws in scripture replace the sacred tableau of cosmic place, time, and way, and where every aspect of this supposed ancient civilization is seen as fully literate. I decided to cross-check my analysis with a different direction, and that is I wanted to look at the medium of the message, and in this case, the literal medium. What was the Book of Mormon text originally written on, and in what language? And of course, we don't have the golden plates to inspect, nor do we have the inscriptions on the golden plates to inspect. So, it's pretty difficult to do. However, we do have several accounts of the description of the gold plates, and they are all in some form of moderate agreement to what the golden plates were like, and even the characteristics of the text written on them. So from that, I did a simple analysis. And so, today we're just going to go over that. In 2015, this bled over into 2016 as I was doing this with the Book of Mormon. I couldn't find this analysis. It's so simple. I thought this is so obvious. But since then, I have found both an apologetic response and, Mike at LDS Discussions has a page dealing with this as well. So this information in some forms is out there, but not quite particular in the approach that I have taken. So today we're just going to go over the gold plates and what they represent. Look, they're allegedly a physical object with physical properties, with real human writing system engraved upon them. And furthermore, these were made and written by a real historical people doing real historical things. So the plates and the writing system must conform to the patterns of history in time and place. And quite frankly, that's not how they're treated. They're treated as really a magical MacGuffin upon which all the hopes and wishes of the faithful place their obedience from which all the authoritarian apparatus of the church extracts their obedience, and to which all the apologetics apply every parallelism they can find to justify the obedience. And I find that system problematic at best. So the plates and writing systems are real and historical, or they are not. There's no in between. So let's start with the medium, the gold plate. So here's the origin story of those plates. September 21st, I'm just going to burn through this because everyone knows it. September 21st, it's an equinox date, by the way. The angel Moroni appears to Joseph Smith, who's 17 years old, and tells him of an ancient record written on gold plates. The record recounts a 1,000-year history of an ancient civilization. September 22nd, 1827, 4 years later, Smith takes the actual plates, according to the narrative, to his home in Harmony, Pennsylvania. Translation begins 1828 and is completed by July of 1829. So from 1823, when Joseph Smith first learns about the plates, to 1829, when we get the finished transcription of supposedly what's on the plates, is we have this, this various history of Joseph Smith knowing plates, trying to retrieve plates, obtaining plates, carrying the plates around, and translating plates. So in my analysis, I just want to know what civilization, we're looking at the Americas, either North America or Mesoamerica, or, any of the Americas. At this point, Antarctica and the Arctic too. We'll go anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. What civilization would be writing a 1,000-year history on gold plates? And so I just pulled from Book of Mormon Central. They have an article posted on there entitled "The Top 5 Archaeological Evidences for the Book of Mormon." And, that's interesting. The top 5, these are the top 5 archaeological evidences. Number 1, this is their number 1 archaeological evidence for the Book of Mormon, is writing on plates. And I just plopped these 3 paragraphs down. I was wondering, Landon, is that big enough text you can read that?
Yeah, I can read it.
He didn't even ask me.
Yeah, we don't want to ask you.
He knows better.
It almost seems a shame to use up one of my 5 evidences here. The issue of inscribed metal plates in stone boxes has been so effectively laid to rest by modern archaeology that Latter-day Saints hardly remember when it was one of the Mormonism's most prevalent and scathing criticisms. We were told the ancients did not preserve records on plates. We were told ancient Israelites in particular did not write on plates. We were told they would have been too heavy for Joseph to carry while running from ruffians or heft from one hiding place to the next. Time has rendered all such objections moot. Hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of metal plates, copper, silver, bronze, brass, and yes, gold, many in stone boxes and even some bound with metal rings, have been unearthed in places as diverse as Spain, Bulgaria, Italy, Greece, Korea, Egypt, Syria, Iran, even Mesoamerica, too many to mention. As for Israel, not only have we found the famous copper scroll of Qumran, but 2 small silver plates from Jerusalem that date to the 7th to 6th century BC. Finally, we learn of a shimmering gold and copper alloy called tumbaga by the Spanish that has existed from pre-Columbian times, the same composition described by Joseph's brother William, bringing in the plates at a nice, heftable weight of 40 to 60 pounds. This is interesting. This is Book of Mormon Central saying this. This isn't one of your 5 theses. This is one of their 5.
That's correct.
And this is interesting because we went to the church history library just recently, and this is what they told us, that there were museums full of gold plates all over the East Coast, and that they were a metal alloy that made it light enough that you could carry it. That's why they could carry the gold plates. So this is the first I've heard of. That was the first I'd heard of that, and now here it is repeated.
Well, and that they were metallurgists. The Nephites and Lamanites were skilled metallurgists and skilled in the making of all alloy.
Rebecca, you made a comment in our last discussion where you said, there has to be a whole ecosystem of technology surrounding the technology of writing and plate making. What are all the things that has to exist in order for this technology to exist, to be traded, to be done, to be kept in libraries, right? What are all the things? And as you look at that, it becomes enormously problematic, but not anything that the apologists can't do. This, so look, here's their argument. And in fact, I have it. This picture on your screen is a picture in 2017. The church actually had, I think his name was Gordon Andrus, actually make a replica of the gold plates. And so there's an article on their website that talks about the process of how he made the plates, how he did the writing on the plates. You know, to get the writing on the plates, first he took the Book of Mormon characters that were written down by I thought John Whitmer, but Dan Vogel told me Christian Whitmer. He standardized their size. He printed them on a special plastic sheet using a laser printer, and then melded them to the plate he had made in a press, so that the ink on the plastic sheet would stay on the metal plate. And then he used a modern engraving tool to engrave each character. And so, I mean, they look impressive, but again, all the technology needed for him to do what he did has nothing to do with the ancient technologies of the ancient world. And we have to look, you know, what would they have done, how they would have done it, what language are they writing it in. In any case, here's their argument. Hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of metal plates, copper, silver, bronze, brass, all around the world. Spain, Bulgaria, Italy, Greece. They finally mentioned Mesoamerica. And so here is a methodology that we are going to run into over and over again in these discussions that apologists do, which is they have a problem. You know, we've got gold plates with 1,000-year history written on them. That seems odd and strange. How are we going to solve that problem? And the methodology then is to go out anywhere in the world at any time period, in any culture, in any cultural context, to find any kind of parallel similarity. And if we find any kind of parallel similarity, we've solved the problem. I mean, this is not responsible scholarship. And in some ways, it's intellectually dishonest. So it's not that, I mean, you can do this. When I start a research project, I do this. I go and I look for similarities, but as soon as I find anything, I then have to start, you know, comparing cultures, times, languages, contexts in order to see what kind of similarity I have. And so, in any case, there's their argument. After they write this argument, they list 3 examples of writing on gold plates that they have found around the world. One of them found in a stone box. And as it turns out, as you do your Google search, these 3 examples are used on almost every apologetic website. So I am going to go over the 3 examples they have used to show that the claims of the book, the veracity of the claims of the Book of Mormon. The first example, which is one that almost all the Mormon apologists start with, are the Darius gold plates. I have here the name of the object, the date of the object, the purpose of the object, the cultural context of the object, its size, and then the bottom one is its textual density, because this actually is important. The textual density is how many words are written on that plate or object per square inch, right? And I'm deriving that textual density. I don't read these ancient languages, so I'm deriving that textual density by taking a modern English scholarly translation, comparing it to the surface area of the object, and that gives me how many words per square inch, okay? So that's how I'm driving the textual density. So here are the three prime examples Book of Mormon Central and practically every other apologist used. Darius gold plates. Well, remember in our first two episodes when I said that from the invention of writing all the way, well, actually into the CEs, into the early Christian era, most religious texts are not written as an objective history. Rather, they're written as in a ritual context. The texts are a tool for a ritual that is being performed. So the primary method of communication is something you do. It's a dance, it's an incantation, it's a ceremony, a liturgy. It's not something you read. And the texts serve that. So, well, look what we have here. Darius gold plates, 511 BCE. These plates are found in the Apadana Palace in Persepolis, Iran, by King Darius, Persian king. The palace, I mean, there's a couple columns and the floor left. It used to be this palatial, hypostyle hall full of, I mean, the pillars are 60 feet tall. It would have been just grandiose to walk in. But this is where King Darius greeted guests and conducted official royal business, from his throne. What they found, they have this big floor of the palace that has survived. And as they began excavating in the four corners of the floor of the main hall, they found 4 stone boxes that had been buried subfloor. And in each stone box was a single metal plate. 2 of them were made of silver and 2 of them were made of gold. And when they opened up the silver plates, they didn't even recognize what it was because the silver had burnished so badly. It looked like decayed metal, black brown. But when they opened up the 2 boxes with the golden plates, they look brand new. I mean, this picture is a picture of one of them. It was shiny gold. On the gold plates is a single inscription written 3 times in 3 different languages. So it's a trilingual plate. It's the same writing system, cuneiform, but as English is used to write English and Spanish and German, this writing system was used to write 3 different languages on this plate, but each of the paragraphs say the same thing. And it's a short paragraph. It describes the extent of King Darius's kingdom. I ruled from this city to this city, from this land to this land. And that it ends with an invocation of a blessing of the God. Quote, may Ahura Mazda, the greatest of gods, protect me and my royal house, end quote. So it's a short text block repeated 3 times. Well, what was the plate used for? It was used to dedicate the temple. It was a dedicatory ritual, which, whenever someone greeted the king in his palace, he walked on the floor, which had 4 ritual tablets buried in it that described the extent of the kingdom and had a blessing of the God blessing the kingdom. So whenever anyone walked in there, they were entering into a sort of political divine realm blessed by Ahura Mazda that regulated the size of the kingdom. So it is a ritual tablet put in the floor to dedicate the temple. This is part of that sacred place we talked about last time. They're binding heaven and earth. They're binding the land with the sky, with the human and divine realms, dedicating the palace so that the king can then orchestrate his business under divine decree. So that context is very important. And we'll see as we go along, this is what all the ancient context is with these gold plates. They're large, 13 by 13 inches, and they have a textual density of 1 word per square inch. Okay. The second example they use is the Pergi golden tablets found in Pergi, Italy, central Italy. These date to about the same time, 500 BCE, and they're the same thing. It's a dedicatory tablet written on gold, slightly smaller. And these are written, there were 3 tablets that were found, and calling these tablets, they're really pounded gold leaf. 2 of them were written in Etruscan, 1 in Phoenician, and they are say the same thing, dedicating the temple in which they were found in central Italy to the supreme goddess Astarte. They state the king who built the temple, the date, and invoke a blessing from the goddess. Quote, "And may the years of the statue of the deity in her temple be years as numerous as the stars," end quote. This has a 3.5 word per square inch textual density. So again, it's the same thing. These, do you see the holes on the circumference of those tablets? They believe they were nailed to a wooden post. And so the Darius plates were put in a stone box, and it's a single plate with writing on only one side, put in a stone box on a rather thick tablet, actually. In the foundation floor, these Pergi plates are thinner stone or gold leaves nailed to a post. But of course, when they excavated it, the post had long decayed, and so they're just finding this. So they don't know exactly in what architectural context these were originally put in. But it's the same thing. These plates are a dedicatory ritual, invoking a divine blessing into the place, and the ritual is sealed to the statue of the goddess in the place. Again, they're binding heaven and earth at the sacred place. And then the final example they give is the Etruscan gold book. This is very interesting to me. This dates between 5 and 600 BCE. It was found in Bulgaria, just north of Greece, and is a Thracian artifact. And this is the oldest book known to exist. And they're defining a book as leaves bound together by some sort of binding. In this case, there's 2 metal gold rings that bind 6 gold leaves. These are approximately 2 inches by 2 inches square. So it's very small, and they have inscribed, they're made of 24 karat gold, written on only one side. And the Etruscan gold book was by 2, the text is untranslated, but includes illustrations of priests, a horse rider, a mermaid, a harp, and soldiers, as well as Etruscan writing, and found in a noble burial. So this is in a burial context. But they have found a series of what are called Orphic gold tablets. And they've now found over 30 of these, found with the buried dead. This is the only one that I'm aware of that's actually several leaves bound together. The rest of them are a single golden leaf with an inscription on them. They tend to be about 2 by 2 inches large. They're found buried on the mouth or on the head or on the chest of the deceased. And they have inscriptions on them. And the ones that can be translated in ancient Greek, they're instructions on how to journey through the underworld after you die. So it's sort of like a endowment, right? A ritual endowment. Or similar to the pyramid text or coffin text, it's a series of instructions that teach you how to go through. There's different roads in the underworld, and you need a guide. And if you take the wrong road, it's not going to be very helpful for you. The problem with these Orphic gold tablets is that they all don't give the same directions.
I guess that depends where you're headed.
So that's a problem.
So there's a left-hand road and a right-hand road. and some say take the left-hand road, and some say take the right-hand road. And so that what that tells us is there's a caste of Orphic priests, but they're not correlated, right? They belong from different towns or cities, and they have slightly different traditions, and they're using slightly different ritual directions. So and these are extraordinarily expensive to make, and so only the upper class, only the wealthy are buying them. This is one of the things in the ancient world. Almost all these rituals for the afterlife are reserved only for the elite, because they're the only ones who can afford all the expensive ritual regalia in order to go through the initiation. They generally required animal sacrifices, initiations. In the Greco-Roman mysteries, you went through this whole initiation in a temple, generally underground, which means you had basically to pay all the priests and priestesses, rent the temple. I mean, extraordinarily expensive. The average person, 99% of the population, couldn't do this. So their view of the afterlife never gets recorded. And it's so blank in some parts of it that scholars assume they didn't have a view of the afterlife, which I think is problematic. But bottom line is, this is a afterlife ritual. We don't know the textual density because it's 6 gold leaves. Half of it are images, and the other half is text. But I doubt it's more than 3 words per square inch. Having said that, I actually went through several dozen examples of writing on gold plates when I was studying this, and the densest textual density I could find was on one Orphic gold tablet. We'll talk about that here in a few slides. In any case, here's their top 3 examples of writing on gold plate. None of these are in an American context. We've got Etruscan, we've got Phoenician, we've got Persian, right? They all belong to about the same time period, 5 to 600 BCE, but they are all texts serving a ritual purpose. This is not what the Book of Mormon is. And so to say then, which is what they're saying, this is proof for the veracity of the Book of Mormon, is just incorrect. Look, every Mormon church has a baptismal font. Everyone that I've seen, even in other countries, well, the Stake Center has a baptismal font. A baptismal font is essentially a big tub with a faucet. In the rich countries, warm water comes out. Everywhere else, your baptism is pronounced in high squeaks. Look, what if I went in and the day before the Sabbath, I bathed and I shaved and I cut my hair in the baptismal font? What would people say? What if I took my Eucharist chalice, the golden cup in a ritual context that is used to serve the wine of the sacrament, and I served a bowl of chili with a salad with it? I used my altar as a charcuterie board and served cheese and crackers. What would people say?
Sacrilegious.
Well, what would the religious people of your religion say? Well, a lot of them wouldn't say anything. They'd just hang you.
Yeah. Good point.
When you have, a baptismal font, a Eucharist chalice are used for specific acts that bind the individual to the eternal. They are holy artifacts used in a holy ritual context. This is what we're looking at. They're writing on gold because the gold is seen as attuned to the divine realm. They could have just as easily written this on papyri or on animal skin, but they didn't. They wrote it on gold, because gold is the holy artifact, the holy metal that is linking heaven and earth, and they're writing a ritual text on it. In this case, two dedicatory oaths or an afterlife ritual, which binds them to the holy realm. In two contexts, to the sacred place, in one context, an afterlife ritual. You would not write a 1,000-year history in this way. They're using it as a holy artifact. There's a function that the baptismal font serves, and you're not to bathe and shave in it. There's a function that the Eucharist chalice serves, and you're not to eat your chili and soup and salad in it. And so these arguments they're making, we have so many examples. Well, actually, I can't find a single example anywhere at any time, in any time frame, in any culture that writes an objective, fact-filled history on any kind of metal. So these arguments they're making do not prove the veracity of the Book of Mormon. They disprove the veracity of the Book of Mormon. This is not the argument you want to make. And yet we just saw this is their number one archaeological evidence for the Book of Mormon. And it's disproving what they are trying to promote. Well, just to be a little bit thorough, I'm going to show the three other examples they used at the Book of Mormon Central. Here are the silver scrolls. They called them silver plates. They have two examples. Sure enough, two silver scrolls were found. Yeah, let me. In a burial. And these silver scrolls actually contain the oldest surviving quote from the Hebrew Bible currently known. And so what are they? 600 BCE, you know, that's very early. The apologists are excited. Hey, time of Lehi, we got writing on metal, right? Not only are we discussing the writing of the golden plates, we're discussing the writing of the brass plates, right? We have to have the entire Bible from creation to the writings of Jeremiah with the entire book of Isaiah, because Nephi quotes from it, on a set of brass plates. Bound together in a book. So, well, what do we have here? We have a 1x4-inch piece of silver foil that had basically Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 through 26 written on it. Here's what that says. Quote, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace." End quote. It was written on this 1x4-inch silver leaf and then rolled like into a little scroll and then worn as an amulet. Right? And so what we have here is a ritual prayer amulet. This verse is an invocation to Yahweh to protect the individual from harm. The Lord bless you and keep you. It sort of belongs to the magic worldview in that they've got a token that binds them to the deity and to the divine, which will protect them, that they wear around. You know, it's sort of like wearing, you know, people wear energy crystals around their neck. For protection and for, you know, different cosmic benefits, or essential oils. They douse themselves in essential oils for certain benefits. And I'm not degrading energy crystals or essential oils, but I can say the Mormon priesthood degrades them. Hey, you know, don't do that. We've got the priesthood. And in the same breath, they quote the silver scrolls as evidence for the Book of Mormon, when in fact, the silver scrolls are being used like the energy crystals and the essential oils.
Point.
Well, you're the only one that would get that, John. That's why you're making
I
yourself
laugh. I
But
laugh.
now I know. That's our favorite part, when you laugh, because it makes us understand, oh my goodness, how do we not know this? But now we do. That's very clear.
So these scrolls
interesting.
are the equivalent of taking maybe a Post-it note and writing something and just rolling it up and putting it somewhere.
That's correct.
This is not a book of scripture. It's a little
No.
note.
No, and again, 600 BC, it's a ritual prayer amulet. The text is a ritual. It's a ritual prayer. They probably sung and chanted this prayer as a prayer of protection, much like the prayers you say with the rosary beads, the prayers that like the sacrament prayer, that you're binding yourself to the Eucharist, to the blood and flesh of Christ, to renew yourself. This is cosmic attunement, a ritual prayer amulet. And by the way, it only has 5 words per square inch textual density. This is going to be a real problem pretty quickly. And so that is what those silver scrolls are. Again, this is not the argument you want to make. This is arguing against your claim for the Book of Mormon. It's not arguing for your claim for the Book of Mormon. These writings on metal plates are both feet planted in the previous thought world that is not the thought world of the Book of Mormon that we talked about in the first 2 episodes. These writings on all these plates are writings of rituals in the analogical thought world of binding heaven and earth. So
do you think that they're focusing more on just the fact that, oh, it's metal? Look, there's metal, so it must be metal, right? They're not really thinking about the context.
That's what they're doing.
Or anything
they're
like
saying,
that. It's
I just
metal.
can't find any writing on metal plates, and that's going to prove it. But that's not honest. That's not history. That's inappropriate. And in fact, I've just shown, here's their top 4 examples, and they argue against what the brass plates and gold plates actually were. If I'm going to find brass plates or gold plates, I'm going to read in so far 1 to 5 word per inch textual density, a ritual. That's what I expect. And everywhere I turn, that's what I get. All right. Now, the Mayan golden plates really interested me. And actually, it took me a long time, because when I first Googled Mayan writing on golden plates, I got nothing. And it was actually a couple of years of just researching and reading about the Maya and the cultures of Central America and the American Southwest that I stumbled upon a reference to the Mayan golden discs with writing on them. And when I found that reference, it took me a while, but I found a dissertation written in the 1970s by Meredith Daniel Paxton, 1975, entitled Gold Disc from the Sacred Cenote at Chichen Itza. So this is what Book of Mormon Central is citing as the examples of writing on golden plates in Mesoamerica. They have found 29 golden discs. All of them were thrown into a cenote. You know what a cenote is? It's a underground watering hole, basically. The Yucatan Peninsula is this massive limestone plate. And the limestone is very porous, and they have these monsoon rains, and it rains, and it percolates down through the limestone, and the limestone creates channels and caves. There's thousands of little caves throughout the Yucatan underground. Well, some of them get quite large. They fill up with water. These are called cenotes. As it turns out, almost every Mayan city is built near a cenote, which is pretty easy to do because there's so many of them. But they use the cenote as an architectural requirement to build a Mayan city. The cenote was your connecting point to the underworld, right? You had a pyramid with a temple built on top, and that connected you to the sky world. You had a cenote with water in it that you would perform certain rituals in or throw certain votive offerings in and this would connect you to the underworld. So you were binding yourself to every level of the cosmos in your rituals, so that when you went and did your daily living, from agriculture to trade to politics to warfare, you had certain rituals that you did to bind yourself to heaven, earth, underworld, that allowed you to do these things. Well, sure enough, this is what the Mayan golden discs were used for. First off, they're dated to between 700 and 1000 CE, AD, right? This is centuries after the Book of Mormon. They range from 4 inches in diameter. The largest one is 11 inches in diameter. They're hard to reconstitute because each plate has a drawing inscribed on them. A few of them, I've got one pulled up, does have some Mayan glyphs written in the circumference. But the main part of the disc, and on most discs, there is no writing. It's just the scene that's being displayed. And all of them appear to be combat scenes. A warrior defeating an enemy, or a warrior confronted with a divine personage. There is the earth monster there, a representation of the underworld, where they were driving powers to vanquish their enemies to the underworld. They're combat scenes. Reconstituting the images on the plates was very difficult because each one of these plates was ritually killed. That is, they performed some ritual for them. They threw them in the cenote. They did a ritual and threw the plate in the cenote, but before they threw the plate in the cenote, they destroyed it. They tore it into pieces. So they did a ritual, they destroyed it and threw the pieces into the cenote. So the scholar that dredged these golden pieces up had to, well, first he dredged them up and took them to the Peabody Museum without telling anyone. So they get displaced, but then they had to reconstruct them, painstakingly, by putting several different discs, their pieces together. And then
is that what those lines are in that picture? You can kind of see it looks like it's split in half.
Yeah. So many of the reconstructions are incomplete. Many of them, have lines and folds in it. I put this one. The dissertation had 9 or 10, reproductions of what they were able to put back together, of 9 or 10 plates, and this was the most complicated one. So most of them have much more simplistic images. But this one is a full scene. You've got water. It's pretty degraded, but you've got, I don't know if you can see my mouse. My mouse disappears somehow. On the upper left, you have someone flying down. He's laying horizontal. His head is to the left. And it looks like there's this wind coming out of his mouth. Do you see that? Let me see if I can. Yeah.
Dang technology.
My mouse is not working.
No, and it's good you're describing it, because a lot of our viewers are listeners, and we're just hearing about it. So yeah, we can.
Well,
I understand.
You're talking the guy with the feather hat.
Yes,
that looks like something's coming out of his mouth.
Yes,
okay, that's a wind. Okay,
wind. Yeah, like he's
blowing
or something. Yes, right above the two guys on a skateboard.
Yeah, and the alien on the left-hand side. Yeah, there you go. We got it.
That wind is called a speech scroll. And we find that at other places. And so that's indicating that person is speaking or singing. So we don't know what he's saying or singing, but it's indicating that he is in the middle of saying something, probably a ritual phrase. This is a reproduction of the ritual they're doing. So once again, the Mayan gold disc is a ritual artifact. It's a ritual votive offering. They are offering an object to the gods to acquire a special blessing. Given that almost all the scenes are combat scenes and that the plates are ritually destroyed, it seems to indicate that they're offering these plates before a battle or after winning a battle as a way to garner either divine aid by the gods or divine thanks after winning the battle to the gods. You know, we don't know if it's before or after the battle. So this is what the Mayan golden plates are that Book of Mormon Central cites. And once again, it's a ritual object in a ritual context. There is no textual density. Unfortunately, the dissertation did not have a translation of those Mayan glyphs on the perimeter. But the textual density would be enormously small, again, within our 1 to 6 words per square inch. And so this is what they're used for. I don't see how this helps their case. Again, this is arguing against their case. This is not the thought world of the Book of Mormon, the genre of text of the Book of Mormon. It's completely different. It's a completely different epistemology. So again, this isn't helpful to their argument. They did mention the copper scroll, and I did put it up here. This is the far right image, and that image you're seeing is actually a reproduction. It's not the actual copper scroll. The copper scroll is interesting because it's the one. So I looked at several metal objects, went over a lot of the Orphic gold plates, but there are bronze plates. Look, there are lots of lead plates that have been found. Again, they're used for rituals. Generally, the lead or tin plates are curse tablets. Someone wants, they have a law case. They had courts back then, and they want to be victorious in their law case. And you know, their public defender, like almost all of them, is not very good. And so they take a tablet, and they're using lead and tin, not gold or silver, maybe because it's cheaper. But again, they're pronouncing a curse, and a lot of these metals are being used as an assonant resonance to the purpose of what their use is for. A gold plate is being used for a ritual to tie you to the divine sky world, right? Or to the divine underworld. A silver plate is being used for a ritual prayer amulet. A tin or lead plate is being used for a curse. So they have a court case and they want to curse the person they're in court against. So then they will write a curse on the tablet and then perform a ritual and curse the other side. Again, this is a form of sympathetic magic, like your rock crystal or your essential oil. You're acquiring divine aid through ritual means, right? This is what we should be finding on the brass plates and the gold plates in the Book of Mormon context, in these date ranges, in these cultures. But we're getting something completely different. We're getting a complete anachronistic text on an anachronistic medium in an anachronistic book. The gold plates and the brass plates literally are an iPhone in the hand of Abraham Lincoln. But the copper scroll, however, is an exception, and I like finding exceptions. This is not a ritual tablet, unlike the other tablets that are mentioned. The copper, first off, it's 94.5 inches by 11.8 inches. It's almost 8 feet long. It's huge. It's pounded copper plate, and it is a banking scroll. On it are several columns of text listing 64 places the temple priests hid gold and silver treasure. And so it's a banking account listing the money. This is 5 to 100 CE. The second temple is sacked by the Romans in the 1st century. So they're probably taking their bank vault and they're going out and putting all the treasure in different places and hiding it. And, you want to presumably retrieve it and find it. And how are you going to do that when you've spread it out all over the countryside, well, they decided we better write this down. And well, first off, half of us might die. So we better write it down so that we have an account of where we've hidden all the money. And so they write it in metal, but it's not gold or silver. It's not lead or tin. It's copper, which is really interesting. To me, this is probably the best example a Mormon could use to analogize not the Book of Mormon with ancient writing on plates, but modern Mormonism with ancient writing on plates, because the Copper Scroll is essentially a description of their shell companies where they hid all the money.
Yeah, I was going to say, I see those parallels completely. Does it say Ensign Peak at the top of that? I can't read the script, but maybe it does.
Where was this scroll found?
This was that's a good question. The Qumran, Dead Sea Scrolls.
Qumran. Okay, so this is not in the New World. This is Old World. No. Okay.
Old World, Hebrew context, 5 to 100. It's the 1st century CE. 1.3 words per square inch textual density. But literally all the other examples I looked at with writing on metal plates, all of them were in a ritual context. This was the outlier. And it's a banking transcript. So it's just important to know.
What you're saying is there's a chance the Book of Mormon.
I was just going to say that. There's a chance.
It's important to put it out.
Speaks to John's scholarship. I mean, he's willing to say, yeah.
No, well, I actually have even. I'm going to strong arm their argument as best I can. So there is a chance. Well, no, there's not, because the text is in that. There's a 1% probability. That's that's where we're at. But there's the Copper Scroll. So
right, and that's not a history. We're not talking about a history, a literary construct of looking forward, looking back. This is a ledger, basically. So different from the others. Yep. But
at 600 BCE, you don't have a written history, and you never get that in any time frame on any metal in any culture, a written history. So this is required. You have to find that. If you don't find that, all these other examples aren't helping you. In fact, they're arguing against you. Finally, they did mention Tumbaga, and lots of people have gone over this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Tumbaga is a gold copper alloy. Sometimes it's actually mixed with silver or other metals that they naturally find in the ores of their mountains. They do have plenty of copper, gold, and silver deposits. Gold and copper is melted together. It does create an alloy. It is more pliable and more durable than gold. And of course, what is it used for? Do we have a single example of a Tumbaga plate with writing on it? No, we don't. Do we have a single example of Tumbaga plate bound in a book with a history on it? No, we don't. Here they use Tumbaga to create ritual objects, religious objects, and royal objects, because the royalty, the kings and queens, were the only people who could afford to have these objects made. So they were used as ornamentation for ritual and royal regalia. Okay. Furthermore, the full smelting date range where we get this is in the Moche culture. That's 200 BC to 600 CE. That's a nice date range for Book of Mormon, but this is in northern South America. This is Peru. This technology slowly goes north. It enters into Panama and Ecuador in this date range, but it doesn't make it to Mesoamerica until 800 CE. And so this is 4 centuries after the Book of Mormon timeline. And they're using this example as, we found Tumbaga. It might work. And so the gold plates were made out of Tumbaga. Well, it's centuries too late for the Book of Mormon culture. And again, you have to ask yourself, if they're creating stacks of plates, it's not just the gold plates Mormon and Moroni make, right? You've got the gold plates of Nephi. We're told of several other plates, not scrolls, not parchments, plates that are being kept, the large plates of Nephi, which is the entire account of the entire history of the Nephite civilization. They're a library of plates. So this is a manufacturing process. And sure enough, 99 to 95% of it is lost. Maybe we don't find any plates, but we're going to be finding all kinds of writing and all the accoutrements surrounding this manufacturing process. We should be finding metallurgy, forges in cities, because every city's keeping a record. And if every city's keeping a record on plates, every city's got a blacksmith, a goldsmith, a Tumbaga smith of some sort. And again, we've already gone over, we should be finding thousands of scraps of writing everywhere, and we're not finding any of this. So again, this is argument that argues against the gold plates. It doesn't argue for the gold plates.
And John, can I ask Heartland? Sorry, we have so many questions. Can I ask Heartland? None of this is anywhere in the Heartland idea of where the Book of Mormon took place.
There is no metallurgy ever developed pre-colonial contact east of the Mississippi ever. Okay. So the Heartland model not only has no writing, I mean, the writing that appears amongst Native American tribes is post-colonial contact. And the metallurgy that appears in the same region is post-colonial contact. There's no writing or metallurgy in the Heartland area.
And this is one of the places that I see that they always go to, that they can find any example anywhere, and then they say, oh, we got rid of that anachronism. Well, in order to get rid of the anachronism, it has to be what it described. You can't say, oh, we found it somewhere completely out of the area that we're saying is Book of Mormon geography, and then say this is what they were using when it didn't exist in whatever area you're trying to claim is Book of Mormon geography. It has to exist in the time, in the place, and be used for the purpose that you're claiming. You can't just take pieces and build all these pieces from every item from across the world that you can find and say, here's a little example that was all thrown together in one culture at one place that we can't find and have no record of.
I couldn't have said it better. That's exactly. So far, they're using the Eucharist cup to serve chili and salad, and the baptismal font to shave and cut their hair.
That's going to be our thumbnail for this episode.
And that's wrong. That's wrong. So,
do you know the weights of this Tumbaga? Because I can't imagine that if you're making an alloy of gold, that it's making it 20 times lighter than it would have originally been.
I look into that. I'm not a metallurgist. And I could not find, right. So some of the Tumbaga they have found is like 90% gold, 10% copper. Some of it is 90% copper, 10% gold. The process of combining these metals into an alloy, I don't know if that changes the alloy's density and metric weight. It seems to me that if you have an alloy of gold and copper, then your weight of that alloy is going to be in the range of the gold and copper. And so if I have a stack of 6-inch Tumbaga plates, how heavy is that going to be? To me, it's still too heavy. But all the apologists say, oh, no, the metallurgists have looked at it and it should be about 60 pounds. If you had copper plates, you're probably at 80 pounds, 90 pounds. which is significantly more than the 40 to 60 pounds that everyone said the plates were. So I don't, I don't know the answer to that question, Landon, but to me, it seems still too heavy. But we're going to go into, the physical measurements and see what the apologists say. And, sure enough, as long as you play with the math long enough, you can make it work. And we're just going to look at that. Anyway, any other questions? Tumbaga doesn't work because it's not in the right place, time, or cultural use. All right. Now, here is the best strong arming I could do for their argument. And it's also a really interesting tablet. I don't know. Is this interesting, you guys?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, that you even have to ask that question right now is our viewers are probably hitting the table going, are you serious, Dr. John? No, this is absolutely incredible. This is just amazing. And you do such a good job of explaining it so clearly for the layman, right? I think we're all understanding this. So
all right.
Yes, please continue.
This is a bronze plate. And I really like this find. And sure enough, the apologists can use, I didn't actually read a lot of apologists talking about this. They were focused on the other things I've already shown you. So this is called the Byblos syllabary. It's found in Byblos, Lebanon. And it's a writing system that has not been cracked. So we don't know what it says. Its date range is interesting. It's 15 is between 1400 and 1750 BCE. So it's really early. And this is our transition point where we find in this date range the first alphabet, and we start getting syllabaries as opposed to logosyllabaries. So we start getting transitions. They have found basically 10 inscriptions in this writing system. So here's one argument the apologists can make. We found a writing system that is uncoded, untranslated. See, they can be lost. Well, of course they can be lost. I've never not been arguing that. There are writing systems that are lost, but the writing system is also found in a cultural context. Byblos, Lebanon, 18th to 15th centuries. It's going to be connected to surrounding languages in linguistic systems. And sure enough, all the scholars say this. So we can't argue a brand new writing system out of context. Well, in the 10 examples they have found, this is how they know it's a syllabary. Remember, there's different writing systems. Mayan is a logosyllabary, a picture writing that represents both words and also syllables. Generally, the syllables are a consonant and a vowel. Sometimes it can be a couple consonants. They know this is a syllabary, not a logosyllabary, and they know it's not an alphabet. How do they know that? Well, they've got 10 inscriptions, 2 on bronze tablets, 4 on bronze spatulas, finely pounded bronze leaf, and 4 on stone inscriptions, a couple altars and pillars. Out of all the examples they have found this writing system, they have found a couple thousand symbols, and they've written down all the symbols, and out of the couple thousand examples, they have found 114 unique characters. Okay? That tells them it's a syllabary. Why does that tell them it's a syllabary? An alphabet is one symbol or character for one sound. The human mouth only makes so many sounds. You generally have 20, 24 consonants, 3, 4, 5, 6 vowels. Okay? A total of between 20 and 30 symbols make an alphabet. There's a few alphabets that have a few more, 33, 34 symbols, but all alphabets have a couple dozen symbols, plus or minus a few. That's the advantage of an alphabet. You don't have to learn a lot of symbols. Well, here's what happens. They take a consonant, let's say the letter B, and they wet it to a vowel, A, I, O, U. And so you can pronounce B with ba, be, by, bo, boo, right? Well, they write a separate symbol for each of those sounds, for each of those syllables. Ba is one symbol, be, bo, by, boo. You have 5 symbols for one consonant wed to all your vowel sounds. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Well, if you have 20 consonants and 5 vowels, your writing system will have 100 symbols. Okay? Well, this writing system has 114 symbols. It's not an alphabet because that's way too many for an alphabet. It's not a logosyllabary because logosyllabaries have symbols for words, and therefore their symbology, their graphemes are hundreds long. Mayan, cuneiform, Sumerian, Akkadian, Egyptian hieroglyphs, those have hundreds of symbols in the writing system. So it's not a logosyllabary, it's not an alphabet. With 114 symbols, they know that each one of these symbols on this plate represents a syllable. Most of them, probably a consonant with a vowel sound. Most words are either 1, 2, 3, 4 syllables long. So that means a combination of these characters are going to create one word. Makes sense?
Yeah. Take
Yeah.
several of these symbols to make a word.
That's correct. A
2 or
couple of
3
these
maybe.
symbols to make a word. Well, what I liked about this bronze tablet, this is the largest bronze tablet, and it's 8.27 by 4.72 inches. Sadly, I could not find the thickness. I looked at every description. I even found the museum where there was a whole write-up on the bibliosyllabary objects, and I emailed the museum because I wanted to know what the thickness of this bronze plate was. I emailed them twice. I never got a response. So I never could find the thickness. Just from the pictures, I can tell that it looks several millimeters thick.
Yeah, you can see that compressed.
Yes.
That edge right there. Yeah.
Yeah, copper, bronze, or whatever it is. Yeah.
So I don't, but this irritated me because I really did want to know how thick it was. What I liked about it is these are the only objects I found where writings on both sides. All those other examples, writings on only one side, no matter how thick the plate was. But these had writings on both sides. So this bronze tablet is the largest. It has a total of 459 characters on. So, on each side, 459 characters. They're etched in the metal with a chisel. They can tell they're being chiseled in. It's not translated, but that gives us a textual density of 5.7 characters per square inch. This is characters per square inch, not words per square inch. So we're probably looking at about 3 words. If you half that, if 2 symbols represent a word, you're probably looking at 3 words per square inch textual density. Now, I didn't have a picture of the bronze leaves that were part of this collection. This is a tablet. They found 4 bronze, what they call spatulas. And those, they did give a description. They were 1 millimeter thick. So they're pounded very thin, almost like bronze leaf, like gold leaf. They're pounded very thin, and they're shaped in a leaf, right? It's not a tablet. It's shaped as a flower stem or leaf, and it has writing on both sides. So this is 1 millimeter thick. That is extremely thin. It has this syllabary writing on both sides. However, on the plates, the writing is very uniform and neat and elegant. And on the bronze leaves, it's pretty sloppy because it's very thin. And so they're just scrawling quickly, the letters across on both sides. Again, untranslated, but the leading scholarship believes that those bronze leaves were labels attached to votive offerings. Once again, we're in a ritual context. These were used as ritual offerings, much like the Mayan gold discs. You would give an object to the deity in the temple, And this is what they were used for. So a ritual context. I would expect that this bronze tablet is also in a ritual context, because there, you know, if it's not, this is your MacGuffin. Anyway, again,
And not in Mesoamerica. This was not found in the Americas.
No, this is Lebanon, the Levant.
Okay, so just another example somewhere in the world of something that's similar with some writing on metal.
Okay. It's the only example I found out of all the examples I looked at that had writing on both sides of the metal. It's the only example I found that had thin, really thin bronze plate. It's really bronze leaf with writing on both sides. And so this to me would be their strongest argument. Again, 18th to 15th century BC on the other side of the world, probably in a ritual context. So it still is not anything. It's as Landon said, they're looking for any kind of correspondence, any kind of parallelism. Well, that's not how scholarship
they
is
could
done.
make the argument that brass was a term for bronze early on, and that this is a brass plate that Lehi could have had access to, being in the old world, and could have carried it over. But again, as you point out, it isn't a written book. It's ritual.
It's a ritual.
And notice there's no holes in the sides of the plate to bind into a book. You know, all these things are single tablets, except for that Etruscan golden book, which is a 2-inch by 2-inch series of 6 leaves bound together by 2 rings with pictures on it. So again, in a ritual context, these are not the objects you're looking for. These are not the droids you're looking for. All right. Well, so after looking at, I looked at probably 30 or 40 examples of writing on metal plates when I did this. And I was satisfied that, except for the copper scroll and a couple untranslated pieces, everything was written in a ritual context. So again, this tells me the Book of Mormon is anachronistic. They're using a complete, you know, chili in the cup, shaving in the font. But still, I went through and I looked at all the dimensions of all the descriptions of the gold plates that Joseph Smith supposedly had. And here are, so let's go through them. Description of the golden plates that Joseph Smith got from the angel Moroni. Joseph Smith says in the 1840s, they were about 6 by 8 inches. So each plate was 6 inches wide, 8 inches tall. Oliver Cowdery, who's one of the witnesses, says they were 7 by 6 inches. So slightly wider, but slightly shorter. Martin Harris, who also held the plates, said they were 7 by 8 inches. So slightly larger than Joseph Smith. David Whitmer, 7 by 8 inches. Lucy Mack Smith, 6 by 8 inches. So there's variances in their recall. No one, for whatever reason, actually took the plates and measured them. No one took the plates and counted the leaves. No one did a thorough examination. All the descriptions are descriptions from memory. Oh, they were about this. Oh, it was about this. Oh, I think I saw this. So, you know, that's interesting.
Seems to be
sort of as
human
if,
error, though. You know, if several people measured something, they'd all kind of say,
"Yeah, no, this is all within." They're all saying the same thing. So this tells us we are. You know, I'm going to go with Joseph Smith's description because he had the most contact with the plates. So my plates in my example are going to be 6 by 8 inches, but they all are pretty close to that. Okay.
But that is very interesting that, you know, no counting the pages, no actual measurement. It's as if they were all just feeling it through a cloth, perhaps, or never, you know, actually accessing them, but just going, oh, look, okay, this seems to be, that's kind of what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, the providence of the plates is pretty sketchy.
That's a whole nother episode.
I don't. There's no official measurement. It's all on recall. They're all pretty close. I'm going to go by 6 by 8 inches. Yeah, look, guys, I'm not a Mormon historian. I know that there are different accounts. A lot of people felt them through cloth. A lot of people, didn't actually see them. Some of them seem to see them in vision. I don't. It's pretty sketchy. Why don't we have them? And why didn't we get a drawing of them? That would have been very easy to do, to sit down and reproduce some of the plates with just in a sketch with the writing on them, or reproduce in a sketch what the whole stack looked like. We don't get any of that. We don't get any measurements. So this is what we get. So this is all we have to work off of. David Whitmer does tell us that the plates were bound by 3 D-shaped rings on, he says, the back side, but it's on one side. So in my estimation, I'm trying to figure out the surface area for the writing space on each plate. And what I do is I take a 6 by 8 inch space, I give it a 1/4 inch margin and a 1/2 inch margin for the 3 ring plates. This gives me 40 square inches of writing surface per side, and being that they're written on both sides, this gives us 80 square inches of writing surface per plate. Okay, this is all I'm doing. Personally, I think I'm being extraordinarily generous. A 1/4 inch is really small. Maybe they wrote all the way to the edges and all around the binding. Maybe we could squeeze in a few more square inches of writing space. But I think 40 square inches is a very generous, fair assessment for our writing surface, 80 square inches per plate. Well, how thick were the plates? Again, everyone except Martin Harris says they're about 6 inches deep, 6 inches thick. There's a stack of plates 6 inches deep. Martin Harris actually tells us 4 inches deep. And that is interesting to me, because that's a pretty big difference. And then Joseph Smith Sr., he has a description of 1 inch deep. So he was the outlier. So everyone's saying 6 inches deep except Martin Harris, who says they're 4 inches deep. But here's the kicker. The plates, a large portion of the plates were sealed. They were untranslated. And again, David Whitmer, I believe, I should have wrote the date down, first says that about half the plates were sealed, but then he comes back in a written testimony and says, well, actually about 2/3 of the plates were sealed. Orson Pratt, who never saw the plates, but he spoke to the witnesses, writes an account where he says about 2/3 of the plates were sealed. And this seems to be the agreement that most of the plates were sealed. So 2/3 of the plates are sealed. That if we go with 6 inches deep, which is what most people say, again, Martin Harris, he's an outlier. He says half the plates were sealed, but he's only dealing with 4 inches of plates. So all these guys here at the top agree that there were 2 inches of translatable plates, and the rest were sealed. Okay. So this gives us 2 inches thick of plates, 6 by 8 inches. Well, now we have to determine how thick each plate was. And this is going to give us a total square inch surface area. And this is how I'm going to determine my textual density, my words per square inch. I've already done this with the ancient examples, right? We're between 1 and 6 words per square inch. We'll talk about this. Well, I guess we'll talk about it now. So Oliver Cowdery, so they all tell us that they're the thickness of tin or a pane of glass. This doesn't help me because I don't know what tin or glass that they're holding. And so I tried looking this up, what was an average thickness of a pane of glass in the 1830s and 40s. And I couldn't find anything. What was the average thickness of tin? And it depends on the context the tin is being used. So I couldn't really find anything. I had in my notes as I was going through this a couple people saying they were almost an eighth of an inch thick. And boy, I tore through all my reading trying to find the source of that, and I couldn't find it. So
you're saying it's a pain in the ass to find the thickness of a pane of glass.
Yeah.
There you go, Landon. You said it.
Well, I'm looking at the ancient plates, and we do have those bronze spatulas that are bronze leaf. And then the Orphic gold plates, not that are about 2 millimeters, and they're gold leaf. That's pretty thin. A lot of the rest of the stuff is closer. I mean, 3 millimeters is just under an eighth of an inch. Here's the thing, though. Besides the bronze, everything's written on one side. This is written on two sides. And if you're writing on a gold alloy, if it's too thin, the engraving on one side will dimple the other side. So it's got to be thick enough that you can engrave on both sides. And this makes me think we're probably in an ancient context looking at something closer to 3 millimeters as opposed to the other. In any case, I do my calculations for 3 millimeter thick plate, 2 millimeter thick plate, and 1 millimeter thick plate. In order to get this to work, it has to be 1 millimeter thin. So let's just go over that. Here is, if it's 3 millimeters thick, you get 16 plates in 2 inches. Okay, maybe even a little bit less. You've got to account for space between the plates, which I'm just dividing 2 inches by, 3 millimeters, 0.11 inch. So, that gives me 16 plates if I'm, if it's solid, but it's going to be a little bit less than that, which actually isn't helpful for their argument. But if I have 16 plates written front and back, that's 16 times 80 square inches, that's 1,280 square inches of writing surface. Well, I know how many words are in the Book of Mormon. 270,000 English words, plus the lost 116 manuscript pages. Now, we don't have that word count, but we do have the manuscript pages of the 270,000 words, 468 manuscript pages. So I just divided 270,000 words by 468. That gives me an average word count per manuscript page. I multiplied that by 116, the lost manuscript pages. This gives me approximately an additional 65,000 words, which means the total word count on the original plates is in the range of 335,000 words. Okay. Are you following?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot of words. Let's just say that. And so what was the individual page again that you just said per page?
Well, that gives us 10,469 words per side of each plate.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
10,500 words per side.
Okay.
Based off 16 plates.
Okay.
Right? Which means the small plates in Nephi, first Nephi through the Words of Mormon, actually are about 65,000 words. They would take 3.1 plates. So that portion of the Book of Mormon from the beginning to the Words of Mormon would all be written on 3 plates.
This is based on 10,469 words per plate. It would take up 3 if they could.
Oh, per side of plate.
On both sides of the plates.
So it would be 21,000 words per plate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
This is based off a 3 millimeter thick plate. You would need 21,000 words per plate. Okay. Well, we are in serious trouble
already.
Well, again, the probability of an ancient culture writing a text with that textual density on a golden alloy is the same probability of a spaghetti monster flying a red sleigh on the winter solstice being pulled by 7 flying cephalopods delivering presents to all the children every year. It's about that probability. So I'm not saying it's impossible.
You never do.
Spaghetti
You never
monster
do.
probable.
You never do.
So, okay, so let's go thinner. Let's go 2 millimeter plates, not 3 millimeter plates. In my mind, this is the thinnest you're going to get, because you're inscribing on both sides a history. This is a lot of text you have to inscribe. You have to. You can't play around with dimpling the other side. Those bronze spatulas that were 1 millimeter thin, the writing on them was pretty sloppy because it was too easy to dimple the other side as they wrote on them. So 2 millimeters is probably the thinnest you're going to get if you're writing on each side of the plate. That gives you in 2 inches, again, it's probably fewer than this because I'm not allowing for space between the plates. It gives you 25 plates. 25 plates, 80 square inches per plate, 40 per side, gives you 2,000 square inches of writing surface. Again, same 335,000 words on the plates. Well, you divide one by the other, and that gives you 167.5 words per square inch. The other one, oh, I should have pulled that up. The other one was 262 words per square inch. Try writing 262 words in a square inch of surface area. Okay? This, the thinner plate, is giving us 167 and 168 words per square inch, 6,700 words per side of each plate. This would give us First Nephi through chapters 1 through half of chapter 8 on one side of the first plate. This is extreme textual density. And the textual density of the ancient examples were what? 1 to 6 words per square inch. We are at 167.5 words per square inch. Again, what's the probability of that?
But it is Reformed Egyptian, John.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
That's the loophole.
Just looking at the materials. I haven't gotten to the text. That'll be our next. That'll be our next podcast. All right, here's my calculation for the 1 millimeter thick, which is really thin. And to write densely on each side of the plate would take a really good trick. But here's the calculation. That gives us 50 plates in 2 inches. Again, it's going to be less than that because I haven't accounted for space between the plates. It gives us 4,000 square inches of writing surface, 84 words per square inch, 3,360 words per side of each plate. We're still at 84 words per square inch, right? Those Biblis syllabary tablets had 5.7 characters per square inch, right? Not words, characters per square inch written on both sides. Probably 3 words per square inch, maybe less. And here on our 1 millimeter calculation, we need 84 words per square inch.
What point text is that in, if I go to my Word and I want to print 84 words per square inch?
Negative 37.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Well, look, when I did this calculation, I was blown away because to me, I just deconstructed its historicity. It can be a tight translation because it's the wrong thought world. This is just another way to cross-check that. And I just did the calculations and realized, my God, how is this done? This is, I don't see how it's conceived. Well, guess what, guys? Well, first off, my assessment is in order for whatever Reformed Egyptian is, I mean, essentially, it has to be able to record 168 words per square inch. That's my 2 millimeter calculation. It has to be able to inscribe 268 words per square inch. What human writing system does that? 262 words at 3 millimeters, 168 words at 2 millimeters, 84 words at 1 millimeter, right? If you have 5.7 characters per square inch, each character must represent 46 words or 29.4 in the thinner plate or 14.8 in the thinnest plate. So each character has to represent numerous words. And, what writing system has one character representing multiple words? And of course, the answer is there is none.
Yeah,
there is no writing.
It's not syllabus. It's not logo syllabus. It's not alphabetic. There is no writing system that falls with that dense of characters.
That's correct. It doesn't exist. All right. Well, to me, that's extremely damning. So after going over as many ancient metal plates with writing on it that I could find, I began looking for how do the apologists deal with this? I mean, I'm not the first person to think of this. It seems just really obvious. And it actually took me a long time to find actually they have dealt with this. And so I just wanted to bring that up. In 1923, a person named Jan Sodal wrote a paper, the Book of Mormon plates, where she talks about this. And so what she did is she took the larger measurement, the 7 by 8 inch measurement given by a couple of the scribes, and she had a literate person write on a 7 by 8 inch piece of parchment, ancient Hebrew, the smallest he could write in pen and ink on parchment. And this is what he produced. He produced 7 chapters of the Book of Mormon on one side using a text, using a very fine needle pen in order to write this on parchment. And so she said, look, I've got a scribe that can put 7 chapters of Nephi on one 7 by 8 inch piece of parchment using a very fine stylus pen and ink. Therefore, if the plates were half to 1 millimeter thick, 7 by 8 inches, no room for the rings, by the way, right? This has filled the entire writing surface. I should be able to do this. So then 4 years later, another person named Henry Miller in 1927 wrote a paper, Epigraphic Considerations, where he said, well, the problem with Sodal's approach is she wrote in Hebrew, but this was, he used the modern block Hebrew, not the ancient Hebrew. So I'm going to write it in the ancient Hebrew. And if the characters are about 1 millimeter tall, each character, I can reproduce this. And then he went out into the world and said, do I find any ancient Hebrew that's written so small that I can confirm that people could write this? And he found 7 examples of 1 to 3 millimeter characters written on weights and seals, tiny clay seals or tiny weights where a small inscription of what the weight was, what the weight was, how heavy it was, or what the seal was describing. So he said, I found writing in that size range, 1 to 3 millimeters, in ancient Hebrew. Therefore, if the plates were written in this way, again, if the plates are 0.5 to 1 millimeter thick, and the characters are about 1 millimeter tall, we can do it. All right, so that's their argument. And so what's this do? Well, like the Book of Mormon central argument that we opened up with, all this does is it shows us that if we play with the math, we can make it work. It also shows us that the Nephite civilization were a bunch, the Nephites were Lilliputians living on the head of a pin. Right.
This is the small writing in the insurance policy at the bottom. All the little.
That's right. Little disclaimer down there. But are these the most current? No one else has touched this in the apologetic world.
This is all I found.
These early 20th century.
This is all I found.
That's absolutely incredible.
This is the entirety of the apologetic argument, and that is if we make the plates big enough, thin enough, and the writing small enough, we can make it work. Well, guess what? That's correct. If you make the plates big enough, thin enough, and the writing small enough, you can make it work. I agree.
Wow.
But let's just try imagine writing that with an engraver's stylus on metal plate over, you would need 50 to 80 plates. So even, if it's thinner than 1 millimeter, you could do 50 plates with such tiny writing. But, let's say you took a bathroom break, right? And you came back and you sat down and you looked at these little tiny dots and dashes and you said, okay, where was I? and how many errors and duplicates would be inscribed in the plates because you presumably you're copying from another record, right? Remember that picture you showed last time, Rebecca, that
yes,
of the huge library. I didn't see a magnifying glass and a little teeny elf doing the engraving. They should update that painting. but this is so implausible. But this is their argument. And all I can say is, sure enough, you make the plates thin enough, you make the writing small enough, you make the plates big enough, you can make it work.
You don't attach them, you don't have a D-ring, you don't have...
Right. So here's just, that's their argument. Now I'm just going to argue from what we have. Okay. Again, they're arguing from the lack of evidence. We don't have any example of any of this really going on anywhere in the world, but we can do it ourselves. And so if we can do it, maybe they could do it. The actual ancient textual density is 3 to 6 words per square inch. Again, I'm going to strong arm the argument. I actually found one example of an Orphic gold tablet. This is that ritual tablet used for instructions in the afterlife. You don't know if you got the right one because some of the priests were telling you to go left and some were telling you to go right. But what's inscribed on them are ritual phrases. Now, so here's another thing. The Book of Mormon is not a series of ritual phrases. If you have a ritual phrase, you can write a noun, a verb, and a direct object, and that'll tell you your entire ritual incantation phrase. You don't have to write the whole thing, right? You can, your text can be denser because if you're, for example, writing the sacrament prayer, it's been a long time since I've been sacramented. Anyone recall the sacrament prayer? Oh God, the eternal Father, we ask thee in the name of Christ to sanctify this water to the souls of all those who bless it. Okay. Well, that's a ritual statement that's repeated weekly. To write that down, I don't have to write every word down. I can write a word for God, eternal Father, bless water. I can write that entire phrase in 4 or 5 words because it's a ritual phrase, and I can recall it without writing the entire thing down. So in ritual text, you can actually get higher textual densities, right? And the highest textual density of an Orphic gold tablet I found was about 20 words per square inch, but that wasn't actually 20 ancient words being written down in square inch. That's a condensed text. However, so there's 20 words per square inch. That meets our 15 words per square inch, 1 millimeter, so you can make it work. I'm just saying if you look at any context at any time and fudge the process until it works, sure enough, you can make it work. Besides that, all the other examples are 3 to 6 words per square inch. They're all used in ritual context except the copper scroll. And so if your writing is 3 to 6 words per square inch, you need over 1,000 plates to obtain the text. At 3 words per square inch, you need about 1,500 plates to obtain the text. At 6 words, you need 750, 800 plates to obtain the text. So I got this picture here. Your listeners aren't going to be able to see it, but here's Angel Moroni delivering the gold plates to Joseph Smith, saying, "Here are the gold plates." "Oh no, Joseph Smith, look behind you. Here are all the plates that you have to translate." Because that would be realistically what the ancient world were produced if they were producing a text like the Book of Mormon on metal plates. Of course, we run into another huge problem. I'm not going to get into it, but I've gone through all this only to realize that the gold plates aren't even necessary, as Joseph Smith rarely, if ever, used them.
We just
We
needed
love it
a
when
rock
John
and a
laughs.
hat. That's all we needed.
However, they were necessary when we were growing up. We absolutely knew that he sat there with the plate. So it's only become recently that we're aware that they were not necessary at all. So
and amazingly,
centuries.
The rock and the hat didn't have to be restored. He already had those in his possession.
Exactly.
He could have done the whole book without any plates.
Yeah. No otherworldly objects needed. Those were all from the world as we know it.
Which is exactly probably what happened.
This is really damning. In essence, the plates aren't necessary, and so and very often Joseph Smith would translate or transcribe with them not even being in the room, or transcribe with them being covered. He wasn't even looking at them, and so I've gone through all this analysis only to read that he didn't even need them. But I think the analysis is necessary. I think we have to put this in an ancient context. I think the apologetic argument is both on the medium of the gold is wrong because there's no writing on gold that isn't ritual context, and on how they try to reproduce it by producing extremely small print using ink and paper. This doesn't help their argument. So anyway, yes, I've got a hat on Angel Moroni. I put in a little fiery salamander on Joseph Smith there. So what does that leave the medium of the plates? There are no parallels in history of a history written on metal. There are no parallels in history of a textual density required written on metal. And there's no parallels of any sort in the Americas. So it's just another way to cross-check what I already what I already figured out is a total anachronism in the text itself. However, there's one more cross-checking. To me, this is damning. And that is by reading the Book of Mormon itself in the Book of Ether. The Book of Ether, it's actually a pretty sophisticated narrative technique that Joseph Smith uses. The Book of Ether is a proto-civilization to the Nephites. So the Nephites were the Lilliputians, and the Jaredites were the Oompa Loompas, because they were writing really small. But the Book of Ether is set up as a proto-civilization that creates a proto-text, the gold plates that Nephi's creating. And so the brother Jared makes plates, Ether combines them at the end, and we have a set of golden plates that records the Jaredite civilization. So again, we have textual frames. We have the brass plates that come from the Jews. We have the gold plates that come from the Jaredites. And then we have the gold plates, presumably, that Nephi and the Nephites create from the prototypes that they have, which are the gold plates of the Jaredites, the brass plates of the Jews. Okay. Well, we don't, again, get a description of the size or thickness of the plates, but we do get a plate count. Textual density, Ether 1, chapter 1, verses 2 through 5. Landon, would you read those for me?
Sure. And I take mine account from the 20 and 4 plates which were found by the people of Limhi, which is called the Book of Ether. And as I suppose that the first part of this record, which speaks concerning the creation of the world and also of Adam, and an account from that time even to the great tower, and whatsoever things transpired among the children of men until that time, is had among the Jews. Therefore I do not write those things which transpired from the days of Adam until that time, but they are had upon the plates, and whoso findeth them, the same will have power that he may get the full account. But behold, I give not the full account, but a part of the account I give from the tower down until they were destroyed.
All right. So sure enough, we don't need to know the thickness of these plates because we don't care about the dimensions of the stack of plates. The size of the plates would be helpful, but I'm guessing that if the Book of Mormon Nephites are using the brass plates and the Jaredite plates as a prototype to create their plates, then their plates are going to be roughly the same size as the prototypes they're using. They've got a standard letter size. This is the standard plate size that you get at the local Lilliputian Walmart when you're buying your plates to write your thousands of records. So it doesn't matter. I have a plate count, and that's what's important for me. 24 plates record, and I also have a description of the content that is recorded on the 24 plates. So we know that it from these verses, it contains an account of the creation of the world, of the days of Adam, all the days of the patriarchs, all the way down until the time of the Tower of Babel. And of course, Joseph Smith is assuming that the account in Genesis is completely historical, anachronistic, right? We already went over that. Tower of Babel, in that thought world is somewhere around 2300 BCE. If you go by the standard, date lines of how the Protestants try to figure that out. Excuse me, I have to chuckle a little bit.
We love your laughing, John.
So from the creation of the world down to the Tower of Babel, we get a full history. That's on there. But then we get the Book of Ether. And that is the account from the Tower of Babel, Brother Jared, there's 30 Jaredite kings, all the wars. We get a description of how they made it from the old world to the new world. It's summarized, right? So we're not getting quotes from the 24 gold plates. We're just getting a summary, which means our textual density is going to be lighter in what we're getting than what's on the original plates. But, oh, wait, there's more. Ether, chapter 3, verses 25 through 27. Landon, would you read those?
And when the Lord had said these words, he showed unto the brother of Jared all the inhabitants of the earth, which had been, and also that would be, and he withheld them not from his sight, even unto the ends of the earth. For he had said unto him in times before, that if he would believe in him, that he could show unto him all things, it should be shown unto him. Therefore, the Lord could not withhold anything from him, for he knew that the Lord could show him all things. And the Lord said unto him, Write these things and seal them up, and I will show them in mine own due time unto the children of men.
All right. And while we're here, let's just read Ether chapter 4, verses 1 and 5. Will you finish that, Landon?
And the Lord commanded the brother of Jared to go down out of the mount from the presence of the Lord and write the things which he had seen. And they were forbidden to come unto the children of men until after that he should be lifted up upon the cross. And for this cause did King Messiah keep them, that they should not come unto the world until after Christ should show himself unto his people. Wherefore the Lord hath commanded me to write them, and I have written them. And he commanded me that I should seal them up, and he also hath commanded that I should seal up the interpretation thereof. Wherefore I have sealed up the interpreters according to the commandment of the Lord.
All right. This is where we get the interpreters. Apparently, they're sealed with the plates that Joseph Smith doesn't use to translate them. And we get a full description of what's written on the 24 gold plates of the Jaredites. It's an account of the creation, the patriarchs, Adam, Tower of Babel, brother of Jared, the entire history of the Jaredites in the New World, and all the generations of men, including an account of Jesus, his resurrection, crucifixion, his life, down all the prophecies to the end of the world. The brother of Jared on 24 gold plates gives us a history of the world from the first generation to the last. Okay. Now, in Ether chapter 15:33, Moroni, so he's putting this at the end of Mormon, at the end of the plates, and he makes a comment where he says, I cannot write even 100th of the things contained on the plates of the Jared, of the plates of Ether in my account. Okay. Well, that just gives me a simple calculation. There's about 17,000 words in the Book of Ether. And if Moroni can't write 100th of what's recorded on those 24 gold plates, that means that there's at least 1.7 million words on those 24 gold plates. And that gives me a textual density that blows everything else out of the water.
Wow, this calculation and this using the text against itself, you're literally reading the text and using what it's saying to do the calculations. You're taking the text as it states.
That's correct. That's correct. To me, this is a death blow. Now, that's not to say there can't be arguments, because, the apologists can make arguments. They can make arguments until it works. But
that they had a chip fab and they're able to put it on a computer chip, and that's how they fit this much on.
I tell you what this tells me is that the golden plates Joseph Smith had were less than 24. Because in his mind, he's thinking that 24 plates can contain the entire history of the world in an ancient writing system. In his mind, well, let's go over Joseph Smith's assumptions revealed in the text of the Book of Mormon. First off, Joseph Smith assumes history is literate. All peoples read and write. We get that from the very beginning. God reads and writes with the heavenly book. The brother of Jared reads and writes. He sees all the prophecies from the first generation to the last2 He's commanded to write it down. So he writes it down in a book, right? 2300 BCE. 2 Nephi 28:29. God reveals his word to all peoples of the world, all the islands of the sea, and he commands people to write his words down, and people will be judged out of the books. Joseph Smith's assumption is that all history is literate. This is profoundly wrong. Almost all history is not literate, is pre-literate. Assumption number 2 Joseph Smith has. These assumptions are embedded in the narrative and text of the Book of Mormon. Religion is literate. The Lord commands his people to write his revelations. I just went over that with 2 Nephi 29, but we just see it again in the book of Ether. Ether sees all the revelations of the Lord. He records them in 24 gold plates. And they are preserved. Mosiah reads them, but he doesn't tell the people, right? Mosiah already knows, according to the book of Ether, that Jesus will be born and will be crucified and will be resurrected, but he withheld the information from the people until after it had happened. Okay? So all religion is literate. Look at all the gold plates we just went over that the apologists are using to defend the Book of Mormon. All those gold plates are orthopraxic, the ritual, right? It's a different kind of thinking. It's not this historical literate thinking. Joseph Smith thinks that religion is like the Bible, that everyone's writing a history of the Bible, right? You know, interestingly enough, it's Clement of Alexandria. It is Clement of Alexandria who writes that the most this is the early first, second century CE. I'm trying to remember when Clement lives, but this is very early Christianity. And he writes that the most sacred things of deity are not to be put in writing. I'm trying to remember where I get that reference. I think it's out of From Ritual to Romance, which is a book discussing the Arthurian literature out of the Middle Ages, written by a Jessie Weston, and she goes over the Arthurian literature and shows that the motifs embedded in the Arthurian literature are ritual motifs. And then she cites Clement by saying that, in early Christianity, the most sacred things of deity are not for writing. We don't have that paradigm in our heads. What that tells us is that the most essential things of the biblical cultures were never written down. We assume they are written down. Everything's recorded in writing. But the most, for Mormons, this would make sense. Do you write down the temple rituals? I mean, you can find them written down, but you don't. Right? And that's at the core of the belief system. The things that you actually do. Well, Joseph Smith assumes that religion is literacy, and that religiosity is literacy, and that all the revelations, he calls the brother of Jared, no one other wrote as great as the brother of Jared. That's in the Book of Ether. He's the greatest writer to have ever lived because he writes all the revelations of the Lord in his 24 gold plates. So here we have two assumptions. History is literate, religion is literate. Joseph Smith also assumes that biblical history is literal, that what you're reading is a literal historical blow-by-blow account, right? I mean, Abraham, for example, he lives traditionally 1800 to 2000 BCE. You read the story of Abraham. It's a couple chapters in Genesis, and he has all these dialogues. He's talking with angels. He's talking with Lot. He's, he has all these dialogues. Where are those dialogues coming from? At 2000 BCE, who's following Abraham around and writing down like a journalist everything he's saying to the angel who's also speaking from a book?
Another thing we never thought about. Our minds are too full, John. We've never thought that direction.
This isn't happening. The dialogues are created very late by the people compiling the Torah as a way to flesh out the tradition that they're fleshing out. So the dialogues are, 1800 years after the fact. And they're fabricated. And that's not, to say that the Bible is a lie, that they are taking a tradition and they're trying to flesh it out. And so they add dialogue to it as a way to flesh out their tradition. Well, Joseph Smith believes that he's reading a historical account. Clearly, he thinks the Tower of Babel is an actual tower and this is an actual historical event, he has no idea that in this time frame, truth is not historical fact, truth is cosmic fact, and they're not recording anything close to what the Bible is saying, in a completely different epistemological framework. So Joseph Smith also assumes writing histories are commonplace. We went over this in the first. They're not till very late. I mean, you know, by the time we get Tacitus and Livy, we you know, the first century CE, we're starting to get real histories. Before that, you know, Herodotus is walking around collecting what people are saying, oral traditions, and we get the Torah, which is a composition of different genres of text from both oral and written accounts. So every one of these assumptions he has embedded into the Book of Mormon narrative and text is profoundly errant. And the Book of Mormon narrative are based on them. This is going to be a real problem when we get to point number 5. He also assumes that monotheism dates to the beginning of time. And we went over this. Oral peoples are polytheistic or henotheistic. You don't get monotheism for, you know, 98, 99% of human history. And then he has this really interesting assumption. We're going to talk about this in our next session. But clearly, based off the 24 plates of ether, which has to have at least 1.7 million words. So 335,000 words in the golden plates. You need, you know, 5 times that to get 1.7 million words on 24 plates.
Or the plates have to be 5 times bigger.
Well, that's the answer right there.
It would have to be more than 5 times bigger. You would have to have, like, you know, it's
you'd be carrying these giant,
these huge,
like a wall-sized sheetrock.
Right. It would be a temple wall.
Yeah,
it'd be a temple wall. There was a temple that had huge writings of really teeny print. Right, we're still dealing with our micro print. Yeah, of these massive, you know, murals of walls, then, you know, maybe, but he assumes that ancient writing systems can encode vast amounts of information in small amounts of writing. We're going to go over this in the next discussion. So here are his assumptions embedded into the Book of Mormon text. History is literate, religion is literate, biblical history is literal, writing histories are commonplace, monotheism dates to the very beginning, and I can get vast amounts of information off small amounts of writing. All of these are wrong, and that presents ultimately insurmountable problems, in my view, for the Book of Mormon. So I'm going to end this by pulling up a Trexmo that you made, Rebecca. Again, I love your
always a Trexmo.
They are awesome. Again, people really need to watch so that they can see the visuals, because I don't know. Can you read that? Can you
Landon, you go ahead and read it. Describe it for the listeners.
Yeah,
and then
the top
read it.
one is Spock, and he's looking at what looks to be an ancient character, and he says, and apparently
he's touching one. He's touching one character on a wall.
And he says, and apparently, Captain, this one single character represents over 2,000 years of their history.
To which Kirk says.
To which Kirk responds, "Are you out of your Vulcan mind, Spock?"
Well, sure enough, that's an excellent Trexmo, because that is describing the assumptions Joseph Smith has as he's creating this narrative. And look, Joseph Smith does need a MacGuffin. He needs an object to base his narrative off. And the object is the gold plates. And, you know, it can't be a temple with 24 massive golden walls. It has to be something portable that he can use as a MacGuffin to show people, I've got the object. I'm translating the object. Here is the text. So he's got an object. I'm not saying that there aren't plates. I'm just saying that in order for those plates to work, they have to be, well, they don't work. They don't work in an ancient context. Sure enough, we started with the Book of Mormon Central. They still have a problem. You still don't have evidence of anything like the Book of Mormon happening. The examples you use argue against your argument, not for your argument. So you still have a problem. The other apologists in the early 1900s, sure enough, they wrote the text small enough, but they still made the plates, less than a millimeter thick. They're still, they just worked it out until they worked it out. You still have a problem. And then we have the Book of Ether itself. 24 plates, 1.7 million words. That's pretty hard. That's really hard. And so when you combine that with what we already talked about in the first two discussions, there's nothing about this that's holding up. Nothing's holding up. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
No, don't leave it there. He's not really leaving it there, because we are going to do episodes about his next couple of points. What do you think, Landon? My mind is reeling.
Again, I'd heard the argument about the density of the writing on the plates, but to show it with the 24 plates of ether and all the text, what it clearly says, taking the text and reading exactly from the text, what the text is telling us, that's so improbable, and it just goes to show we just keep running into problem after problem after problem after problem, and you can do apologetics around it, but when you have to do apologetics for everything, and the probability of every one of those apologetics is so remote that when you have 1,000 things with a 1 to 1,000,000 chance of it happening, you turn that into statistical zero probability, and that's what this is showing.
That's how I see it. It's a statistical zero. I tell you what's really hilarious is I didn't do this till 2015. What the hell was I doing?
It takes time.
I didn't even think of the questions. You have the tools that you're given. Of course, I was already well deconstructing the church before that, but I didn't actually sit down and just think this through. And to me, it becomes a statistical zero.
And I think it's important to say that what we're doing here is not trying to destroy someone's faith or bring them away from a church. We're pointing out that this is the science, and the science is consistently supporting that it didn't happen the way that we were told that it happened. And that has to factor in to your faith and how you interpret what happened.
I have zero interest in tearing down a person's faith. All I'm interested in is truth. It's all I'm interested in. And if apologists can come and show me truth that counteracts what I've presented, I'm interested. I'm not here to, I make no money doing this. There's an apologetic argument, right? They're making money on their podcast. Oh God.
Nope.
I make no. All I am interested in truth, and to be honest, I would be happy to do a discussion not on this topic, but on the epistemology of truth that people apply in Mormonism, the believers, the critics, the how the church does it. And because, look, Mormon church has a lot of goodness in it. And as I see it, 99% of it is given to the church by its members. The members give it their sacrifice, their good intent, their sincerity, their devotion, their piety, their repentance. When you have millions of members doing that, you are going to have some good things, great things. So from the bottom up, Mormonism is full of goodness. From the top down, it's full of rot. And that is a big problem. And I will have that argument any day of the week with any apologist or critic. But I have no desire to tear anyone's faith down. I just, here are the facts. How is the Book of Mormon a product of an ancient civilization in Americas? What's the writing? What's the medium? What's the materials? What's the text? What's the culture? Just give me the facts. And it's a statistical zero in my view.
So what you're saying is the writing is not on the wall.
Oh, dear. Landon always brings it home.
Writing is not on the wall.
Or
not
on
on the
plates.
wall or on the plates. Well, now we talked about that giant temple wall. You know, the writing could be on there tiny. But no, I think this brings us to the close of this. And oh my goodness. And I don't think, John, that any of us could have said it any better than what you're saying. That is not the intent at all. The intent is just to present the science, present the facts, invite anyone to delve into the scholarship, to look at peer-reviewed sources, to ask questions. That is the intent of everything that we're doing. So that being said, thank you everybody for watching. As we stated before, this is not the last you will see of Dr. John. We have a few more points to go through, so you can look forward to that. But in the meantime, we invite you to, we've had some people comment and say, I've watched these episodes 3 times. I'm taking notes. I feel that you need to really understand. I mean, it's just incredible. And the deeper you dive, the more you do understand. And it just opens your mind to a new way of thinking and all kinds of possibilities. So we invite everybody to watch part 1, part 2, and this is part 3. And then to look forward to a few more parts that we'll be doing with Dr. John. We invite you to like and subscribe Mormonish if you'd like to see more of our content. And you can hit that little notification bell if you want to be notified when a new episode comes out. And if you would like to support the infrastructure of the channel, you know, the different things that we have to have in place technology wise to get this information out. We have links to how to donate, PayPal and Venmo on our show notes. And we just like to thank again, John. It's just incredible to talk to you. It's just, you give us things to think about that, like you said, you came up with a lot of this in 2015. I mean, none of us have thought anything about this in 2023, and we're just barely starting, just barely scratching the surface. So it's just been a wonderful experience to connect with you and to continue to bring this content to all of our viewers and listeners. So please comment, let us know what you're thinking. Please do. And thank you again from Mormonish. See you next time. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.